In the heart of a fog-enshrouded town stood an ancient mortuary, its Victorian architecture casting imposing shadows beneath the moonlight. The mortician, Eli, was a man of skeptical nature and unyielding rationality. His profession demanded it, especially during the midnight shifts, which he had grown accustomed to. However, one particular night promised to unravel his grasp on reality, challenging everything he thought he knew. The clock struck 12 as Eli began his shift. The air was unusually cold, the kind of cold that seemed to seep into the marrow of your bones, whispering of unseen presences. He shrugged off the feeling. After all, working alongside the deceased was bound to inspire such sensations. The first anomaly occurred when Eli was preparing a body for embalming. A soft, melodic humming filled the room, a sound too coherent to be dismissed as a trick of the wind. He paused, scanning the room, but there was nothing but the echoes of his own movements. Rationalizing it as a figment of his imagination, Eli continued his work. Then came the reflections that weren't his own. The mortuary, adorned with antique mirrors inherited from its original owner, began to reveal images that unsettled Eli deeply. Once, as he passed, he saw in the mirror not his reflection but that of a woman, her face twisted in a silent scream. When he looked back, the space behind him was empty. Attempts to rationalize the occurrences became increasingly difficult when the dead began to communicate. At first, it was a murmur, like leaves rustling in the wind. Then, distinct voices emerged, whispering secrets, confessions, and resentments left unspoken in life. Eli, steadfast in his disbelief in the supernatural, began to question his sanity. The climax of the night was a terrifying chase that truly tested Eli's courage. Objects began to move of their own volition, instruments clattered to the floor, and the lights flickered in a chaotic symphony of horror. The air grew thick with a sense of malevolence as a shadowy figure appeared, its form barely discernible in the dim light. It moved with purpose, targeting Eli with an intensity that left him breathless with fear. Running through the labyrinth of corridors, Eli found himself trapped, the dead ends of the mortuary's design turning against him. In a moment of desperation, he confronted the entity, demanding answers. What he received was a revelation that would shake the foundations of his skepticism. The ghost was a former mortician, bound to the place due to a grim mistake that had cost several innocent lives. As dawn broke, the paranormal activity subsided. Eli, physically and mentally exhausted, found himself alone, the ghostly apparitions gone with the night. The mortuary was calm once more, but the silence now spoke of hidden truths, of lives and stories untold. Eli could no longer deny the existence of the paranormal, his world irrevocably changed. He remained at the mortuary, dedicating his nights not only to his duties as a mortician but also to helping lost souls find their peace, turning his once skeptical view into a mission of redemption and understanding. The mortuary still stands in the fog-enshrouded town, a sentinel of the night. And Eli, once a disbeliever, now serves as the guide for both the living and the dead, a bridge between worlds, forever changed by the terrifying events of a night filled with ghostly encounters.
In the heart of a sprawling city, where the urban sprawl met relentless nightlife, there was an Uber driver named Marcus. A man of few words, Marcus was known for his punctuality and the impeccable state of his black sedan, which glided through the city streets like a shadow. However, one night, during a moonless embrace, his ordinary shift morphed into an anthology of ghostly encounters that would forever haunt his memories and chill those who dare to listen. It began on a seemingly mundane Friday. Marcus, who had braved many late nights, didn't believe in ghost stories. To him, they were nothing more than tales conjured to scare children or the overly superstitious. This night, however, the very fabric of his disbelief was about to be torn apart. The Lady in White. His first encounter happened around midnight. A request pinged on his app, directing him to an old part of the city, where the buildings whispered secrets of a bygone era. Arriving at the pickup location, he saw her. A woman draped in a flowing white dress, her features obscured by the darkness. She slid into the back seat, whispering an address before falling silent. As Marcus drove, he noticed in the rearview mirror that her feet didn't quite touch the floor. Chill air filled the cabin, making him shiver. Upon reaching the destination, he turned to inform her, only to find the back seat empty. Cold sweat drenched his spine. The door had never opened. Marcus sped away, the echoes of her laughter haunting the night air. The disappearing hitchhiker, trying to convince himself it was merely his imagination. Marcus continued his shift. Before long, he saw a young man hailing him from the roadside, desperately trying to catch a ride. Reluctantly, Marcus stopped. The young man, soaked from the rain that hadn't fallen that night, asked to be taken downtown. Conversation flowed easily at first, but as they neared his destination, the hitchhiker's tone changed. He began recounting the story of a tragic accident that occurred years ago on this very night, only to suddenly vanish mid-sentence. Marcus slammed on the brakes, heart pounding, only to find an empty seat beside him. On the dashboard, a wet imprint remained, a ghostly reminder of the passenger who once was, the whispering child. Hoping to shake off his growing fear, Marcus decided to take a break. He parked near a park, known for its serene beauty by day, but now it seemed a shadowy abyss. No sooner had he closed his eyes than a soft tapping echoed on his window. A little girl, no older than 7, stood outside, asking for a ride home because she was lost. Concern overrode Marcus's apprehension, and he unlocked the doors. She climbed in, her small voice barely a whisper, giving directions that led them deeper into an unfamiliar suburb. The houses here seemed to watch, windows like eyes in the dark. When they arrived, she thanked him, her voice echoing unnaturally as she exited. Marcus watched her walk towards an old, dilapidated house, disappearing at the threshold as if swallowed by shadows. The door never opened. The final passenger, Marcus, now thoroughly unnerved, decided to end his shift. Yet, fate had one more encounter in store. A final ping, a pickup from a location he recognized all too well, the very park where he had met the whispering child. Compelled by an unknown force, he drove there. A man awaited, his appearance ordinary, yet his eyes bore a depth that seemed to pierce Marcus's soul. Without a word, he entered the car and simply said, "Drive, you know where." As they drove, the city seemed to transform, streets darkening, the very air thickening with palpable dread. They arrived at a cemetery, shrouded in mist and moonlight. The man turned to Marcus, his eyes glowing an unnatural hue, and whispered, "Thank you for returning them home." He gestured towards the rear seats, where, for a fleeting moment, Marcus saw his previous passengers, silent, watching. Then, the man vanished, leaving Marcus alone in the chilling embrace of the graveyard. Forever changed, Marcus never spoke of that night, his skepticism replaced by a bone-deep certainty of the world beyond our own. He left his job, haunted by the memories, but bound to silence by fear. Yet, those ghostly encounters lingered, a chilling testament to the mysteries that dwell in the shadows, waiting for the curious or the unfortunate to unravel their stories.
As the clock struck midnight, Mark, the hotel clerk, braced himself for yet another shift at the infamous Eldridge Hotel, a place as shrouded in ghostly tales as it was in shadow. This was not Mark's preferred shift, but as the newest employee, he had little choice. The Eldridge Hotel, standing since the 1800s, housed countless stories of the supernatural within its decaying walls, each room a chapter, each hallway a verse in a never-ending anthology of horror. Tonight, the air was different, heavier, as if charged with a silent warning. Mark's shift began as any other, with a routine check of the logbook and a scan of the surveillance cameras, the corridors empty, and the 13th floor, as always, mysteriously absent from the elevator's panel. Unfazed, Mark settled in, the glow of the computer screen his only companion in the lobby's vast, dimly lit expanse. The first sign that this night would not be like the others came with the ding of the elevator. The arrow pointed downwards from the non-existent 13th floor, and as the door slid open with a creak, an icy chill swept through the lobby, sending paperwork swirling in a dance with the unseen. Mark, though startled, approached the elevator, peering into its depth, finding it empty. As he turned away, a laugh echoed from the shaft, a sound both young and impossibly old. Shaken, Mark returned to the desk, convincing himself it was just a trick of the mind, a product of the hour and the hotel's eerie atmosphere. Yet, as the night grew deeper, the paranormal activities began to escalate. Phones rang with no one on the other end, only static-filled whispers that seemed to call his name. Shadows flickered at the edge of his vision, disappearing when he turned to face them directly. The defining moment came when Mark heard the sound of children laughing in the hallway. Faltering, he approached, flashlight in hand, only for the sounds to lead him to the grand staircase, where the temperature dropped so suddenly his breath fogged the air. There, floating orbs of light danced upward, leading him to the forbidden 13th floor. Drawn by a force he couldn't resist, Mark found the elevator responding to his push of the non-existent button for the 13th floor. As the doors opened, he stepped onto a floor that shouldn't exist, greeted by the sights and sounds of a grand party from another era, ghosts of the past swirling in a spectral dance. Their faces turned to him, eyes hollow, smiles too wide, as they beckoned him to join. Terrified, Mark ran, but the corridor stretched endlessly, doors slamming shut of their own volition, each bang a thunderclap in the silence. Whispers filled his ears, telling tales of anguish and despair, of life cut mercilessly short, of souls bound to the hotel. His flashlight flickered out, leaving him in suffocating darkness, the laughter now a cacophony that seemed to mock his terror. In a desperate bid for escape, Mark found himself at the door of the fabled room 999, a room said to be the heart of the hotel's malevolence. The door swung open on its own, revealing a vortex of spectral energy, voices screaming in torment. Against his will, Mark felt himself drawn closer, the voices becoming clear, calling him to join them in their eternal anguish. With every fiber of his being screaming for salvation, Mark made one last-ditch effort to escape, sprinting back towards the elevator. It miraculously appeared, offering him a fleeting chance at escape. He pressed the lobby button frantically, the doors closing just as a spectral hand reached for him. The elevator descended in agonizing slowness, the lights flickering, shadows dancing across the walls. When it finally reached the lobby, dawn was breaking, the sunlight filtering in weakly through the heavy curtains. The door opened, and Mark stumbled out, the hotel now silent as a grave. Exhausted, heart pounding, he turned to see the elevator panel one last time. The button for the 13th floor was gone, as if it had never been there. Mark knew then that he couldn't stay, not after what he had witnessed. The Eldridge Hotel had shown him the depths of its haunting, a nightmare from which he was fortunate to awake. From that day forward, Mark was a changed man, wary of the shadows, forever haunted by what he had seen. He left the Eldridge Hotel behind, but the memories, the sounds, the terror remained, a vivid reminder of the night he encountered the true face of horror.